Good morning and welcome to Business Morning. It's Thursday, the 5th of December. I am Bosin Amafai. We welcome everyone here in Nigeria and around the world. So Nigeria's got another economic outlook report, this time from Moody's Investor Services, one of the world's top 3 rating agencies, issuing the latest credit rating action on Nigeria, affirming the country's B2 local and foreign currency issuer rating, but changes Nigeria's economic outlook to negative from stable. Moody's says negative outlook on Nigeria reflects the country's increasing risks to its fiscal strength and external position. So where are the fault lines for the Nigerian economy in terms of holding the B2 rating, but the outlook going from stable to negative? Moody's Investor Services says Nigeria has an extremely narrow revenue base, a sluggish growth which prevents fiscal consolidation. The agency also says the risk by the government may result to increasingly opaque and costly options to finance moderate but rising debt burden, including vulnerability to adverse change in capital flows, is building on increasing reliance on foreign investors to fund FX reserves. Nigeria's fiscal or financial strength, according to Moody's, including its debt profile, has materially decreased, while economic fundamentals, strength, institutional framework, and governance have not materially changed. So over time, Moody's says there is a risk of social unrest given the country's very low average income levels, high levels of poverty, and growing inequalities. The government was told that the continuation of current policy mix, which includes rationing of foreign exchange supply, suppressing part of FX demand via 41 items, which the government hoped would boost local production and job creation over the long term, may constrain economic growth in short to medium term. So what's the outlook moving forward? Before that, let's get this very quickly. Breaking news coming into our newsroom this morning. Several people are feared dead following a pipeline explosion in Barua area of the Alimosho local government of Lagos State. According to initial reports, the fire incident occurred due to activities of illegal oil bunkering by vandals in the area. The Barua area of Alimosho local government experienced a fire outbreak leading to the death of several individuals. The number of the dead or injured are not ascertained at the moment, but we'll get that for you as soon as we have it. The initial report says this was responsible to vandals illegally bunkering or breaking into the pipelines belonging to the NNPC within the area. That's the Barua area of Lagos State. That's breaking news as we have it at the moment. We'll update you within the hour until 11 o'clock when we have the next news bulletin here on the channel. Meantime, Moody's says its outlook on Nigeria, in brief, what does it say? It says that fiscal deficit for Nigeria will likely remain around 4% of GDP. That's about 50% of revenues moving forward. Growth in the economy will be subdued over the coming years. Then the country's rapid debt accumulation will continue. Of course, President Buhari is asking the Senate to approve another $30 billion in debt, which was initially rejected for the 2016-2018 period. And the country's debt to GDP will be 49 trillion naira by the end of 2021. That will be about 27% of the country's GDP. That's in summary. This story is coming just 3 days after the World Bank released its latest economic outlook on Nigeria, sounding some of the similar warnings about the state of Nigeria's economy. So let's start checking with the markets very quickly. How did we finish on this third trading day? The stock market remained very sluggish, soft as it were, a negative 0.02%. The market is looking for a breakout to the upside or the downside before the end of the year. Some folks still holding their feet out for a Santa Claus rally before the end of the year. But if you look at these numbers, it looks like the Santa Claus may or may not come, depending on how investors' appetite or sentiment remain before then. But look at the primary market activity. That tells you a better picture of how the markets actually perform on a daily basis. This is where, you know, in terms of volume, this is sharply lower than our daily turnover average of about 250 million. This is very weak trading day. If you look at it, the value both in naira and in number of deals tells you that sentiments were soft on Wednesday. That gives you the primary data. That flows into your secondary data, where you have your general index and the total equity capitalization, trying to hold by the thread to 13 trillion naira. Look at the 5 main sectors we use as a mirror for you on a daily basis, and it tells you the interplay of both positive and negative sentiments. That's your banking sector down about 0.5%, and the oil and gas by 0.24%. In the middle, you found 3 positive readings. Consumer goods gained 0.15%. Industrial goods was up 0.34%. News from within the industrial goods space was two separate extraordinary general meetings by the shareholders of CCNN, that's the cement company of Northern Nigeria, based in Sokoto State, approving the merger with Bua Obu Cement Limited. That is the story. So Bua is an unlisted cement maker, is combining his business with cement company of Northern Nigeria, which is listed on the stock exchange. What would that mean for the shares of CCNN moving forward? That we'll talk about ahead. But again, the insurance coming through much stronger in the negative or in the green territory, 0.77%. Look at the oil and gas. Not so much a story to tell if you discount Wando. Of course, has a big volume, 3.073, considering the size of that stock. And the company, 3.62 naira, that's in a negative reading. But Japan went up 10%, max on similar amount of number of shares. That's 3.675 million units. Quickly check with the NESD over-the-counter markets. That also remained soft, but this is again, but not yet back up to the 700 reading on the NESD over-the-counter. The NSI still below 700 now. That's reading 695.91 for you, 0.45% on Wednesday. Then you have the market cap, not yet back at 500 billion. Then you can see the number of units traded and the naira value, just 6 transactions. So let's bring in a bit of commodities markets updates. Just a second, everyone. What the big stories? The Moody's numbers, well, the stories about the outlook on Nigeria was part of the story that we'll hear on commodities market. Just a second, everyone. We'll be right back.
When your food is cooking, you should add a little salt. You can never go wrong with Dangote salt because it's refined, iodized, and so white, back so nice. You can never go wrong with Dangote salt. Oh yeah, put up, Sarah, shake up, cook up. You can never go wrong with Dangote salt.
It's not just salt, it's Dangote salt.
So let's get this conversation around the commodities market update, get everyone to understand this. And this, we're bringing in Adim Okwesa, who is a member of the economic think tank and is a research analyst at financial derivatives company. Adim, good morning.
Good morning, Bosun.
I'm sure you folks are not missing the Moody's report in one of the burning economic issues. When you get a credit rating and an outlook, everyone's ears up. Again, if it goes from stable to neutral to negative, then it looks like some alarms start ringing in everybody's head.
Yes, indeed. I think that's like that report said is reflective of the increasing risks that the economy is facing. Our physical and external position is becoming increasingly vulnerable. We're still extremely vulnerable to the movements in oil prices. And to be frank, I think we are very ill prepared for the next recession. In fact, I think the next recession will even be more devastating on the economy than the last one. Because if you look at it, our monetary policy rate is still at double digits because of the fact that inflation is at double digits. So interest rates are still relatively high. Fiscal policy, very reluctant to spending very little money in comparison to our peers, in comparison to what South African countries are doing. Our excess crude account is at less than $1 billion. Our external reserves are declining. Talks about an IMF loan will immediately be shut down. The government is very resistant to take any help from any sovereign nation, from any multilateral institution. So, if any recession occurs next year or 2021, we'll be in very big trouble.
I think the reports and the outlook coming through are not significantly encouraging. The number of risks being identified are increasing in the fault. That's what I mean by the fault lines. This report talked about still poor public finance management, talk about oil prices, and says, look, the current economic policy mix is not enough, it's not good enough. Restriction of FX supply, restriction of 41 items and all of that will hurt the economy in the short to medium term, or to short to mid-term. All these are critical issues, both more on the fiscal side, a bit on the monetary side, because it says we're paying so much more for foreign investors, and so we're leaning too much on foreign investors here, portfolio investors, that is.
Yes, indeed. I think we have become, since 2016, 2017, we've become very vulnerable to FPI flows. Any adverse change in those flows would affect our economy very greatly.
Significantly.
Our external reserves are dependent on FPI. Our currency, to that effect, is dependent on FPI flows. So we need to find a way to kind of decouple that link. It's going to be very difficult, but we need to do that. We need to change this sentiment of short-term political expediency taking precedence over long-term economic benefits, because unless we'll be very in big trouble. We're moving at a very sluggish pace. At some point, the country will become a tinderbox. It will become a ticking time bomb. We need to avoid that.
Well, one of the things, and we'll talk about it a little bit more, but one of the issues being identified by Moody's says Nigeria's fiscal or financial strength, including its debt profile, has materially decreased.
Yes.
That's hard-hitting.
That is because our revenue frequently, significantly underperforms year on year. We need to borrow money to plug that deficit, and that is one of our points on burning economic issues. Like you said, the president is about to submit a 30 billion plan. The government is probably mulling another Eurobond issue in 2020, in the first quarter of 2020. Although that will be on more prudent terms, concessionary rates, so that is a positive. But our debt levels are moderate right now, but they are rising, and that just increases our vulnerable to external conditions.
This is not, that particular line is not so fiscal and financial strength. When your fiscal and financial strength, including, that means both your fiscal and monetary strength, including your debt ability, is materially decreasing.
Yes.
That means you're getting weak health-wise.
Yes.
So the country's financial position, as we speak, is not rosy at all. But again, one story that is also out there in this report relates to what Moody's says. Over time, there is a risk of social unrest in Nigeria, the likelihood that there will be social unrest, given the country's very low average income levels, high levels of poverty, and growing income inequalities. These are three, what I call the poison in the chalice.
Yes, like I said, at some point, this country will become a ticking time bomb. We'll be ready to implode. Social
The level of
unrest.
poverty.
We've already seen some bouts of social unrest occur. At some point, when inflation is increasing higher, unemployment is increasing higher, people would only feel frustrated with the government. People will feel more and more despondent. And the immediate reaction is to protest, to carry out mass protests, would be extremely disruptive to the economy.
Okay, great. So let's talk a little bit more about what else is in our commodities this morning. What was this new deal with the Russians over fertilizer?
Yes, the Russians, Nigeria and Russia have signed a fertilizer, a deal to produce fertilizer in the country, which is certainly a positive. One of the challenges of the agricultural sector is low productivity. Crop yields are too low to produce significant amount of crops. Yes, so fertilizer will be one palliative towards that challenge.
If this deal go through and all of that, that will add to what Indorama is already doing and a
Yes.
few others.
Yes, indeed. You have seen local companies like and multinationals like Indorama boost fertilizer production. So this is certainly nothing but a positive for our agricultural sector.
Interesting. But I think the biggest story, try to wrap it up, is the OPEC meeting. Oil prices is soft, but I saw Brent this morning still around $62 a barrel. That's not significantly bad for a pricing a benchmark for 2020 budget.
Yes, I think the big question that is on everybody's mind, would OPEC deepen its cuts or not? I think Saudi Arabia is very keen to surprise the market on the upside, mainly because of the Aramco IPO that's happening today too. But not every other member is convinced about that. So it's still uncertain if they would deepen production cuts or not. And I think another main focus of the meeting is trying to press those nations that are underperforming towards in regards to compliance. Nigeria has been one of the worst compliants of the OPEC agreement deal. So I think certainly some pressure we put on countries like Nigeria to improve our compliance. But you can see why we are reluctant to cut our production, because we need the money we can get. Just
It's
like
difficult to comply when that's your main source of revenue.
We need all the money we can get.
So we need every barrel out of the ground.
Exactly.
And we need it on the market. And we need it at some nice price levels to keep the economy from overheating. I'm sure that's a very big story there. Anything from the soft commodity space before we wrap it up finally? I always like to check in with the global, the wheat, corn, sugar, and cocoa.
Well, those commodities have been on the downturn this week, mainly because of this risk-on settlement, because of this
Trade
talks, yes.
No one is sure.
Exactly. President Trump announced tariffs on Brazil and Argentina still imports. He's threatening to impose tariffs on France for
digital tax.
Retaliatory for digital tax. Yes, and it's still very uncertain about this US-China trade deal. So that risk on sentiment is affecting global commodity prices and depressing commodity prices, and that's why prices are down at the moment. Apart from that, fundamental, this is typically the harvest season of those commodities. So with that increase in supply, prices are on the downturn this week.
For West Africa, if we bring it a little bit home when it comes to cocoa, where are we as far as yields concerned, as far as weather conditions and the pricing? Yes,
cocoa prices are at high for this time of the year, mainly because this is the harvest season. But there's this factor of strong global demand. Demand is very strong at this time of the year, mainly for seasonal reasons. Chocolate is in heavy demand during the Christmas and Valentine's Day is just around the corner. So that is why prices are not declining too much. We're still at a very comfortable level, $2,500, $2,600.
Well, I think the Valentine thing is around February, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, if the borders remain closed around then, I'm sure a bag of rice will be better than a box of chocolate. Well, if you decide to do Valentine, I'm sure if you bring a bag of rice at about 28,000 naira, than a box of chocolate, I'm sure we will just 2020 Valentine might just be with a bag of rice.
Can you give your Valentine's Day
a bag of rice?
A bag of rice.
No, she's going to appreciate it more. I just need to ask Bidemi here. She's behind the camera, maybe. But I'm going to ask Jumoke in the master control if she could just whisper that to me. What would she prefer for Valentine? Chocolate or bags of chocolate or what do you call a bag of rice? Jumoke, I'm sure. She says a bag of rice. Great. Thank you so much. A bag of rice will be far more interesting. That's one vote already. Valentine 2020, a bag of rice against a box of chocolate. That's the vote. I just got you down one vote there. Okay. Thank you so much, Adim. I appreciate your coming through on the show. Let's get to the breaking news. There's been several people have been reported the dead. These are early images this morning from what happened at the Barua area of Alimosho local government of Lagos State. A number of people are dead. The incident was said to have occurred as a result of the activities of vandals engaging in illegal oil bunkering in the area. The most part of the Alimosho local government area of Lagos State had layers and layers of pipelines of petrol products by the NNPC. It's the back end of Lagos, by the way, where you have a lot of tank farms and a number of petrol loading facilities belonging to the NNPC. So vandals activities is always around that, and you can see those images. We'll continue to cover this for you. Get more details at the top of the hour. We'll be back in 2. Stand by, everyone.